I'm excited to be here to be presenting to you guys. Um, just to set things up a little bit, this is the first time that I've presented this particular presentation, and also the first time that I'm doing a presentation in under 30 minutes. I think the longest presentation I've ever had to deliver was about 3 hours long, and that was not enough time. So I'm gonna try to get everything into this without making it feel like I'm fire hosing you guys. This is an interesting topic. I was up late last night putting this together and putting the final touches on my talk today. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting because this particular topic, making curiosity a lifestyle, is outside of my normal realm of things that I talk about, which is why I was so excited to speak at the creativity conference, because as you'll see, I like stretching myself into different directions. And this is definitely a different direction, sort of talking about me and my methodologies versus f-stops and shutter speeds and ISOs and Nikon, Canon, Panasonic, and all that stuff. I'm talking about something that's completely not that. So this should be really interesting. Thank you everyone for coming. This is going to be really good. So let's dive into it. Since, like I said, I only have a couple minutes to go through this thing. It's going to be interesting. So I have a couple of slides that I'm going to step through so that I can keep myself on track here. So obviously the title of this talk is Making Curiosity a Lifestyle, Living Life, Learning, Adventure, and Exploration. What does that mean? So this particular presentation really it's going to dive into, from a surface level, how I operate and how I've operated over the last 5+ decades on the planet, and how I plan to operate going forward, and how I'm able to sort of keep up that enthusiasm and excitement and curiosity, right? So let's dive into this. So the first thing, just a little bit about me. And this particular piece, because I've had a relatively long career, could last 20 minutes, but I'm going to compress it down into just one slide and tell you guys about what I am. So it's a little complicated. I'm a dad, I'm a father, I'm an uncle, I'm a brother. My brother's in the chat here. If you see another Van Johnson in there, that's my big brother. Hey, Daryl. Um, I'm a brother. I'm a significant other. I'm a nephew, but I'm also a marketer, a photographer, a podcaster. I'm a rusty graphic designer and a bad magician. So all these things kind of fold into my eclectic state of being. And I love all this stuff. I love everything I'm doing. And it's kind of part of this whole idea of lifestyle design. You kind of craft what you want to be and build it, as you'll see as we step through this presentation. So, one of the things that I mentioned that I am is that I'm a father and a brother and all that. What I am no longer is a son. So here's my dad here. He passed away not too long ago. We actually had his funeral just last month. And I can say one of the best gifts that my dad gave me was that he impressed on me the permission to be curious and to keep learning as you progress your way through the planet. So, that's one of those gifts that parents give you that you just carry with you, and it kind of sits on your shoulder as you navigate through the complexities and the challenges of life. So in this particular talk, I'm going to share three mindset shifts that will help you hopefully see creativity in a different way. Each of these stories that I'm going to share with you has led me on an adventure that taught me lessons that I kind of carry with me to this day. And I'm going to learn new lessons tomorrow and today. Even this particular talk, I'm learning lessons, and I'm stretching, like I said at the beginning, stretching into new directions and not afraid to stretch. And like I said about my dad, I give the first lesson is to give yourself permission to experiment. And this is key. So this is, if I had to sum this whole presentation up into one thing, it's giving yourself permission to experiment. That goes from the biggest project that you're working on all the way down to just this little thing you want to try. One of the I guess a bad part, I'd say, of working for companies like Apple, I worked for Apple Computer, was the relentless pursuit of perfection and not being able to, for the most part, not being able to have something be completely finished and be proud of it. There was always something that could have been better, and you're always rushing up against the clock to get it done, right? And if you could have another year to get this thing polished, you would take that year, but it's got to ship today, so it's good enough. It's never finished. But when you shift your mindset into giving yourself permission to experiment outside of a company like Apple, then you're giving yourself permission to not be perfect. Everything doesn't have to be exactly perfect. It's more important to ship something, as people say in software, than to make it perfect. So one of the first stories in this is I call it my encyclopedia story. When I was growing up, my parents, my dad had bought a set of encyclopedias. And I remember as a nerd, I was a nerd of the family, if you can't guess. As a nerd, I would just go through these encyclopedias from time to time and just learn about different things and imagine, man, what would it be like to be over in Africa or in Paris or, in the middle of the ocean? Let's learn about these deep sea anglerfish with a light on their head. Why do they have a light on their head? So these encyclopedias were kind of my window into the world. Remember, this is pre-internet, right? So I didn't have the internet on my phone just to look up things at a whim. This was like, okay, this is the sum total of the world's knowledge sitting on the shelf in my house, and I get to go through everything. So this was the beginning of my journey, I think, on exploration and being curious about the world. And I credit it to these encyclopedias. I wish I still had them. It was amazing. The next story I'll throw at you is CHiPs, California Highway Police. This isn't a picture from the television show CHiPs, but it's the best one I could find to represent this topic or this particular story. So when I was a kid, again, I was curious, and I'll wrap this up. This will all make sense at the end of the segment. So I was curious about, my other brother and I used to watch CHiPs all the time and then pretend like we were Ponch and John riding around. And then when I got a little older, I decided I wanted to build a mini bike and figure out how to build a mini bike. In my head, I was going to build one of these motorcycles. I was like, okay, I'm going to paint it black and white. I'm going to put some saddlebags on the back, put a windshield, and I'm going to ride around with the CHiPs theme playing in my head. But along that journey, I learned so much about everything from, because we didn't have any money. I didn't have any money. I was a kid. I had an allowance, but I didn't have a lot of money. So I had to figure out how to get the frame for the mini bike. Where do you get the engine? How do these throttle things work? And what about the seat and all this stuff? So I had to figure out all these things in order to put this thing together, in order to try to realize my dream of building one of these amazing looking motorcycles. In the end, it looked obviously nothing like this motorcycle, but it was fun and it was cool building it. Ultimately, I crashed that mini bike into a brick wall. That's another story because I wasn't good at making throttles that didn't stick. Let's just say that. So, but it was fun, and I learned so much. Even to this day, some of the things that I learned about mechanics and let's call it engineering, all that kind of stuff came from just these little micro lessons that you form along the way. And then the last one for this segment was we were living on Long Island near a town called Port Jefferson, and I used to save my money up from my paper route to go to Ron Joe's House of Magic in Port Jefferson, or ride my bike down there, which was a long way. Ride my bike to Ron Joe's House of Magic to buy magic tricks, and then go next door to buy licorice and comic books. That was my flow. Every Thursday or Friday, I'd ride to Ron Joe's, buy a magic trick, and then go buy comic books, and then go home and read my comic books and eat my Twizzlers, right? So the whole idea of this particular story was the act of making money with the paper route, with a goal in mind at the end, which was buying magic tricks, comic books, and licorice at Ron Joe's House of Magic. That was my little ecosystem. That was my world. I learned how to do sleight of hand. I learned, well, I'm no expert, like I said at the beginning, but I learned about the concepts of sleight of hand and magic and prestidigitation and all that stuff. And in the end, one of the reasons, and this is an inside baseball thing, one of the reasons I wanted to learn this whole magic thing was I thought magic was real when I first started. I was a kid, right? I'm like, hey, You mean I could just read books and have powers? I can read minds, I can make stuff disappear. I want to learn that stuff. So I embarked on this journey to learn it, thinking, yeah, this trick stuff is just the beginning. There's a real magic at the end of this where, I'm going to learn all this Doctor Strange level stuff. Never happened, obviously. The lesson I took out of that was magic isn't necessarily real, and reality is more interesting than the fiction of it. Because with the magic, as I was learning that, I was learning about marketing, right? I was learning about psychology, influencing people, sleight of hand, all that stuff. So all this stuff was kind of the Trojan horse of what I was learning while I was eating that licorice and reading those Spider-Man comic books in my bedroom, right? So Ronjo's House of Magic, that first shot on the left there of the magician behind the counter, I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember standing there probably at about the angle that the camera is at, maybe a little lower, because I was a little kid. But I remember looking at all those magic tricks back there and thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could just afford all those? I'd buy everything and learn every trick in the store. But as it was, I think I had like 20 bucks or something. I can only buy a small trick. The big picture, the actual magic store, when I was growing up, it was only the right side. So I think they must have gone and purchased the left side as well as they expanded, but it was the right side. The left side was a 7-Eleven or some convenience store that I would go to the magic store and then buy my magic trick or dream about a magic trick and then go next door and buy the rest of my stuff. So fun stuff, inside baseball stuff. So close this section off. Give yourself permission to experiment, try new things, because it's going to build new pathways and light up new synapses in your head. Just try stuff and give yourself that permission to not be perfect, to experiment and try things out. It will take you down different paths. It's like a tree branch. When you start out on a tree branch, yeah, there's leaves at the end there, but it's going to branch off and you're going to learn all kinds of things along the way, from building mini bikes to learning magic tricks. So really cool stuff. It's interesting. The next thing that I want to talk about real quick is talk to people doing interesting things. I can't stress this enough, and this was hard for me because I grew up relatively shy. I was a shy kid and didn't really, I was introverted. I was that nerd that liked magic and comic books, and I wasn't really that much into sports or all that other stuff, but I was, into the science and all that stuff. So really, really, what was hard for me was to talk to people and strike up conversations, or worse yet, hold an engaging conversation. So the first vignette that I'll share with you is military. So when I went into the military, I spent 8 years as a combat photojournalist in the United States Air Force. I was the beginning of my career, stationed at Yokota Air Base, Japan. And I'll tell you, to break someone that's shy out of their shell, I don't think I mean, maybe there's other, but for me, there was no better situation than to throw me into basic training in Lackland Air Force Base and then shoot this Midwestern kid over to Tokyo for 2 years. So, or yeah, it was 2 years I was over there for 2 years. And that was culture shock. But the main thing that I took out of that, as I was over there, I'm just a little kid there, this young guy that's in the middle of a different country and a military. And I'm thinking, this is maybe I didn't make the right decision, because I'm literally a fish out of water. After the first couple of weeks or so, it was the best experience in the world, because it went from me being on Mars to me just being on another part of planet Earth with people that just didn't speak the same way I did. And it was, again, lighting up new synapses and new pathways, learning how people, how to deal and how to interact with people. So that first sort of adventure. And then there's been, dozens and dozens of little vignette adventures. Even at Yokota, there was just a ton of things that happened. One thing relatively recently, that I'll throw into the presentation is I led a photo workshop, or was one part leader of a photo workshop in Vietnam. And this is after I left the military. This is, relatively recently. And the apprehension that I had about going to Vietnam, because it's a communist country and because I'm military or ex-military, it was, my apprehension was high. I'm thinking, oh man, do I really want to go here? What's going to happen to me? I'm going to get off that plane and it's going to be all bad. Did I make the right decision coming to this country? And when I got off the plane, yeah, sure, there were red and yellow flags everywhere. And, it was just, I'm in Vietnam. But I was there for literally maybe 6 hours or so. You get from the airport to the hotel, you check in, you go out, go downstairs, have a bite with everybody. And my apprehension level went from, holy crap, I made the wrong move coming here, all the way down to, this is the nicest place on the planet and I feel safer here than I do in my own country, right? It was literally like that. I was like, wow, I could see myself living here. This is awesome. And had I not taken that trip, had I said no to co-leading this workshop, I never the whole area of Southeast Asia or Vietnam would have been like, yeah, you probably don't want to go there. Let's go somewhere else. And now it's at the top of my list of places to go, simply because I opened up the pathways and overcame the fear of going new places and trying new things and being able to talk to new people. So that's that second thing. And then the last thing in this particular segment is, speaking of being able to talk to people, the podcast that I run, This Week in Photo, I do a lot of public speaking as well at different industry events. And being the shy guy, even doing a podcast in a room by yourself with the door closed, not knowing what unknown faces are going to be looking at you and judging you from the audience and thinking whatever their worldview is, looking at you and applying that to you, it builds up a certain level of fear, right? And it took me about maybe 2 years from the time I started on this podcasting public speaking journey to literally now, right? It's still there where you feel nervous, but you push past it. And for me, pushing past things for a talk, whether it's to one person or to 1,000 people, it's always that first, hi, my name is Frederick Van Johnson. Once I get through that level, then boom, it's usually just okay. And no one's laughing and pointing fingers and snickering at me. If I can get past that point, then I'm good, right? And the podcasting piece, like, I've met some amazing people. And these photos here, you see me, I think that's in New York with Derek Story doing a talk in the Panasonic booth. And then also at home, I was interviewing the amazing Karen Hutton and talking about, I think we were talking about her particular podcast at the time on my podcast. So, I've done, since the beginning of my podcast career, I've literally done hundreds of interviews. I feel I'm better at it now, but each one helps me get better for the next one. I try to push it forward. And now I feel like I can, in a professional, it's a really interesting nuance, because in a professional situation like this, for example, speaking to you guys, or when I'm doing a talk, I can do that all day long now. It doesn't bother me. It's fun. I'm relaxed. I used to be just wet with sweat before the event and during, and then afterwards I'd just be exhausted. Now, not so much. I'm okay. But I'm still nervous when talking to people in the real life about non-industry topics, one-on-one or one in a small group. I still get like nervous. Did I say the right thing? Like that high school nervous. Are they looking at me? Are my shoes right? All that stuff. It still comes back. But the only way to get better with this stuff is to do it, is repetition, and do more of it. All right. And to wrap up here, we got a couple minutes left here. The one of the yeah, this is the ending slide of this. So the next thing, just real quick, is changing your state. So changing your state. I know Alberto talked a little bit about this in the previous presentation, but it's literally important to change your state. And what I mean by changing your state is changing your environment so that you can be excited and energized about new things and apply that energy back to your old stuff, right? So one of the things that took me down that corridor was when I had the opportunity to impersonate the president in the White House in his office. So that's a whole nother presentation I could go through. My brother knows this, but this was an opportunity that I was actually working with a company called Pixel Core and Google at the time. And this was when the President Obama was in office. And I think this particular shot was taken during his first his first term. And this was for a Google Hangout town hall back when Google was doing Hangouts and, you know, pushing hard on Hangouts. I think they had just launched. So the Obama administration decided, let's do a town hall and talk to citizens about things. So again, pushing outside of one's comfort zone, let's go to the White House and pretend to be the president as if I'm able to do that, right? So I go in, I put my suit on, put my flag on, I go in there and I'm literally doing all the dress rehearsals as President Obama, sitting in President Obama's chair while, you know, unbeknownst to me at the time, while we're doing rehearsals, that guy was watching me pretend to be him, which was, that's a whole nother story. We'll have to talk about that over drinks one day. But really interesting. So taking yourself out of your comfort zone and pushing into things. This particular thing, if you had told me when I went there that, hey, you're going to be impersonating Obama in the office, put on a suit and all that, I probably would have declined. But as it was, they invited me to this event to be a behind the scenes photographer, which I can do all day. And, you know, I can be a fly on the wall. Nobody has to see me. But at the end, as we were doing rehearsals, they had an epiphany that, hey, we need somebody that kind of looks, that's around the same height as Obama and black and, you know, and can speak and all this stuff, can kind of pretend to be the president. Frederick, can you sit down? So I got looped into it. And subsequently, we went back several times to the White House and did it again. But had I known that first time that it was going to be this, I probably would have declined. But now I have those synapses and I know that it wasn't as scary as I would have thought it would have been. So push outside of your comfort zone. Another thing is the Yucatan. So went down to the Yucatan Peninsula to record a tutorial for the This Week in Photo website. We're doing a tutorial on music videos. And I remember there's a ton of stories that come out of that adventure. But one of the coolest stories was we were staying at this resort, or not really a resort. It was just like a little hotel on the beach, right? With a little bar, very nice, that, you know, you could walk right out to the beach. Right next door to the right of where we were staying, me and the film crew were staying, was a commune, like just a gathering of people that were living off the land and hanging out and, you know, intermingling with each other. And I remember standing on that beach and flying my drone. I was like, okay, I got to get a shot from over the water back at all this stuff. This is amazing. I can't not do that. So I did it, flew my drone. You can see when this was. That's an old Phantom, DJI Phantom drone. So I flew that thing out, took some photos back, and then we decided, hey, let's go over to that commune next door. They have a tower there that you can climb up and get a shot down. So we went over there and I was thinking, yeah, let me fly my drone over here. Literally, this is 500 feet to the right. So we go over there, fly, I get ready to boot up and take off with the drone. No satellites. This is 500 feet, 500 feet away. The thing could not find a single satellite when it was on the commune land. And this is not like a military installation with some high-tech wireless GPS suppression technology. This is like grass hut kind of stuff. For some reason, it wouldn't work next door. So what did I take out of that? There are things that I don't know. That's what I took out of that. There are things that I don't know that I can't explain, and I'm not going to try to explain them. But that was one of the learnings that came out of that place. And then the last thing that I'll throw at you real quick on changing your state is, if you guys remember what these things are. This is the World Trade Center. And roughly 3 weeks before the towers came down, I was in New York City, standing on top of one of those towers, taking photos with me, doing a tourist shot and all that stuff. And, you know, mainly taking photos of New York City. I didn't think, you know, who wants to take pictures of these things? They're ugly. Let's take pictures of New York City from on top. And then they came down, and suddenly those pictures became much more valuable for me because, again, much like the White House, it's a situation that will never occur again. So really exciting stuff, but this would not have happened if I did not change my state. I did not try to do things out of the box, did not travel to interesting places. So I encourage you to do that. If you're not already doing it, travel, get out of your box, change your state. Even if it's just one town over from where you live, go have lunch in a different town that you haven't been at before. And you'd be surprised at how the synapses in your brain will fire up. So change your state. White House, one of the things I learned about the White House is, things that seem scary don't necessarily live up to the hype that they kind of project into your brain once you get into them. Yucatan, you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay. World Trade Center, entropy, everything goes away. So try to experience things that you can as much as you can now before you can no longer experience them. All right. And then as we wrap this up, we talked about giving yourself permission to experiment. We talked about talk to people that are doing interesting things, break out of your comfort zone. And then finally, like I said, change your state. So cool stuff. Again, I did this in less than 30 minutes, had to compress it in here. If you guys want to reach out to me and learn more about this stuff or chat about it or just dialogue back and forth, I'm now re-engaging into social media, kind of reluctantly, but I'm making a push back into social media. And you can find me right here. I'm at Frederick Van. If you want to connect with me online, I will absolutely respond to you if you chat me up on there. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you guys for allowing me to bend your ear about all of the, some of the things that keep me excited and, help me make curiosity a lifestyle. As you see, as I move through life, I'm always learning things, and no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm still shy. I still don't do a lot of stuff, but always push forward and try to step out of your comfort zone. That's it. I hope to see you guys online.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. I'm sure I can speak for others when I say a lot of what you said really resonated with me personally. So it was just nice for me to hear you and for me to be heard. So we also can open the floor to some questions. If anyone has any, you can say it in the chat or any questions.
Hey, I see some friendly faces in there. Michael Rhino is in there. Hey, Michael Rhino, how you doing? I know my brother has to have a question. He's shy, but he's gonna ask a question. I know.
if you'd like, I can make it so anyone can unmute themselves if you prefer to talk in person rather in the chat. Let's see.
That's actually already been checked off, Sarah. So if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question directly, you're welcome to. There's no session immediately after this, so we are okay to run over slightly.
Awesome. Cool. Hey, Aiden, had I known that, I would have made my presentation twice as long.
Sorry, I should have mentioned. There was initially a session after this, but it was canceled fairly last minute. So
okay. No problem. Yeah. So this stuff is exciting. The one of the things that keeps me really, I think one of the reasons why I'm in the career field that I am, photography and all this cool stuff, is because it is always changing. And I look at the world of photography as, I don't know if it's equal parts, but it is a combination of technology and geekery, all this bits and bytes and software and gear and gadgets and all that. But I like portraiture and fashion type photography. So it's also a bit of psychology in there, right? Where you not only do you have to understand the science and physics behind capturing light on your sensor, but you also have to do that while eliciting and forming a partnership with your subject. So that piece of it, those two things kind of go together: the technology, the psychology, and then it's always morphing and always changing and providing new things to learn. For example, right now, this is one of the things that I'm excited about. This right here. You guys see that? That is a Insta360 One X2 with a Rode Go wireless microphone attached to it. So with this thing, speaking of being a nerd, with this thing, I can shoot 360 video and stream it live so that, as say I'm doing an interview, I can mic up two people, put two people in the scene, connect that thing to Facebook or YouTube, stream live, and have the viewers look around the scene as I'm streaming with good audio coming out of it. Because that's the Achilles heel of these things is usually the audio sucks, but with a good wireless microphone on there, now you have good audio and 360. So follow me on social because I'm going to be doing some of that stuff very soon as I take this little portable studio. Look at this. This is just a portable studio. It's on a selfie stick. The portable, I can take this anywhere, throw it in a little tiny bag, and do a high quality interview. And the cool thing about that thing is, I'm going to geek out for a second. Cool thing about that thing is it has this, Insta360 has this technology called reframing, which is essentially when you shoot 360, it's shooting two 180 spheres and then seamlessly stitching them together and putting you inside it so you can look around the sphere, which is distorted. With reframing, it allows you to punch out a 1080 or a HD frame inside of that later in post-processing and reframe your shot as if you were there live. So I can record an interview, for example, and then later in post on the computer, aim the camera at me when I'm asking a question, and then aim the camera at the guest when the guest is answering, and then zoom out a little bit, show both of us, and then show the scene, and then do all this just sitting at the computer, which in all from this little thing, which would have required an entire camera crew and people, later, or camera crew with gear in the past. So we'll see how it goes. That's the idea. But again, learning new things, right? And experimenting. That may fail miserably. The resolution may suck, the audio may not work right, or something may go wrong. But the act of trying and pushing and trying something new means I win. Like Tony Robbins says, right? There is no failure, there is only learning. So you try something and fail, you have the education of knowing what failed, right? Versus the person that didn't try at all and doesn't know, right? So keep trying stuff, keep failing, and eventually you'll succeed.
And it looks like we have a few questions in the chat. Michelle Brooks is asking, how has COVID affected your ability to talk to interesting people and get out of your state?
Michelle Brooks, I know you. Hey, Michelle, I've seen you in what, 20 years, something like that. Yeah, so how has COVID affected my ability to talk to interesting people? Well, it has strangely enough increased my ability to talk to people, because as everything moves virtual, I can do everything from here, right? So I've done like this conference. I think when Maxim did it in the past, he was doing it in Iceland, which maybe he'll do it in Iceland next year. And maybe I'll go to Iceland next year, but it's easier to do it here. I've got a couple of events that I have to do after this. So I'm doing this event and then I'm transporting myself somewhere else to do another event and another event. And I'm just sitting in the same chair. As long as you got a decent camera and a good microphone and some good lighting, I can be everywhere. But the net of it, Michelle, is I can do all this stuff here, and I've kind of expanded my sphere of influence during COVID. When COVID is over, I've made these connections, right? And now, hey, Frederick knows how to speak on camera and delivers a halfway decent presentation. Maybe we'll invite him to do it live. So, it has opened up a lot for me in terms of being connected to people and being able to do things that would have required a Southwest flight, a hotel, dinner, drinks, all that stuff. Not that those things are bad, but you can't do a lot of those in one day. So cool. And good to see you, Michelle. We gotta connect. Are you still in the Bay Area? Good. All right, we'll connect. I'll reach out.
We also have a question from Elliot Strunk. And he is asking, how do you encourage people to be curious and explore while still making a progress toward a goal, whether that's a finished project or mastering a skill? What is your guide for personal project boundaries?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. The answer to that is it depends, right? As an artist, any artist will tell you that work is never finished, it's only abandoned, right? So you never really finish anything. Even, engineers and coders and programmers are artists as well, and it's never done. There's always something that you could do to make it better. And the constraint is always time. When does it need to be done by? And I think part of the joy of being an amateur speaking specifically about photography, being an amateur photography in a lot of ways is more advantageous to being a professional photographer. Professional photographers are time constrained and they have to get a certain thing done by a certain time, got to get that deliverable out, whether it's perfect or not, because money's riding on it. And you can't spend too much time on any one thing because you got to go on to the next thing and it's diminishing returns after that. The amateur, which the word amateur means for the love of, right? So the amateur photographer can spend 3 days retouching a portrait to perfection if they want to. They can do that. Doesn't matter what the business model or how much money they're going to make, because they're doing it because they love it. So when you're if there's a time constraint, Elliot, if there's a time constraint at the end of it, that's your constraint. You have to work towards that. You can still learn, obviously, while you're in there, but your ability to experiment is going to be limited because you got to get the thing done, obviously. But if you're just doing something, it's a self-imposed project, then like this 360 stuff, then I could mess around all day long trying to get that stuff right and playing around in the software, because there's no billable hours at the end of the line that I'm trying to adhere to.
And it looks like we have one more question from Penny, and she's asking, how do ongoing changes in audience and interactions empower you to propel your cause stronger than before? And does this negatively or positively affect your own personal creative process?
Ongoing changes in audience and interactions empower me to propel my cause stronger than before. Uh, yeah, I mean, that I think it depends on you and how you are able to embrace those ongoing changes and how you internalize things. Uh, and it's hard. It's just like anything else. The world is insane right now, and I would argue that people said the same exact thing 20, 30 years ago, right? So there's a lot of things that you could look at negatively to hold yourself back, things that are happening in the world. You could look at it with a pessimistic, glasses half empty kind of perspective. But I would challenge you, Penny, to do it, like I had one of those slides I presented, have a state change in yourself. Not so, in this case, not so much a location state change, but yeah, here's an example, an experiment. So I'm in California, and traffic is not good here for the most part. So one day, and I get frustrated just like anybody else, people in their cars on their phones, sitting at the green light on their, that kind of thing. You get frustrated. You're like, why is this person in front of me? And it feels like a personal affront against me and my time. If people don't respect my time, how dare you be in front of me, not going and Facebooking when I have someplace to go? I got to get to In-N-Out Burger, man. Why are you in front of me? Right? So, but I did this little experiment where, you know what, I'm gonna shift my brain state and not take it personally, and not feel like if I don't make it to whatever my destination is, it was through malice of all the obstructions in my way. I'm just another blood vessel that's floating in the bloodstream of traffic. Not a big deal. And I tell you, when you do that and you kind of sit back a little bit and you think about it, you're like, yeah, that person's on the phone, whatever. I'm gonna get on my phone until they go, right? So, things in your day, and my day in that experiment, my day was so much better, and it's not that you can always control your emotions, because sometimes you are in a hurry. You got to get to this job interview or some appointment or something, and someone is holding you back because they're being inconsiderate or something. But if you can shift your brain into, well, maybe they're not being inconsiderate because they are purposely trying to hold you back. Maybe it's just a thing, and it's not the end of the world if you make it there 5 minutes or 2 minutes late or whatever. So that's kind of the mindset that I do, and it's interesting. I'm human just like everyone else for the most part, and it's hard. The human condition is really, it's hard to navigate this stuff when you're constantly bombarded with negative stuff. Like for me, just to put a bow on this, like another state change that I made was this whole YouTube thing. So I get most of my news and that kind of stuff from YouTube for the most part, because it's in my feed. I'm like, oh, this is what happened. So and so said this. And then I realized several months ago that everything in my feed was negative. Like nothing in my feed was like I could look at, like Marie Kondo says, nothing sparked joy in my feed, right? There was very few things that I was looking at. They were like, wow, I feel better for having looked at that video. It was all the opposite of that. So what I did was I reset my YouTube. You can go into YouTube and reset your history. So I deleted my entire history, reset the whole damn thing. And, of course, I started getting things that didn't pertain to me. But what I did to retrain the algorithm was do things like, hey, I'm going to search for photography. Let's do a couple of searches on all these other things that I'm interested in. And now suddenly my feed is populated with things that I'm interested in. Interestingly, though, those negative things started re-popping up again, no matter, and I didn't even search for them. They just started re-popping up again, trying to, radicalize me or whatever. So it's like, now I have to be specific about what I look at. So, and I put myself on a news diet as well. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting being a creative today and trying to maintain a somewhat positive attitude with all the crazy stuff that's going on right now, right? Especially the crazy stuff, notwithstanding all the family drama that I've had to deal with over the past couple of months, but just the regular wave and the tide of craziness that happens. So you have to be, I think, a stronger person in order to withstand that and not let it stain you as a person, and keep focused on what your goals are.
We also have a question from Daryl. How did your father or our dad affect your creative process? Who was first in photography, him or you?
He was first. Well, I was first as a professional photographer. Our dad was an engineer, and he was the behind the scene guy. He was at one stage in his career, he was the chief engineer at WLS TV, ABC in Chicago, and he was the main engineer on the Oprah show when it was the Oprah show, or AM Chicago, all that stuff. And I remember him taking me into the office on like bring your kid to work day, and showing me all the gear that it took to put on one of these shows and to put on the show. And I saw the robotic cameras and all that stuff. So technically he was the first one. He affected my creative process by empowering me with computers. You remember Compute magazine, Daryl? So Compute magazine, they used to have these crazy programs in BASIC in the back pages that you could type in and then type run and see syntax error in line 3000. You had to go fix it. So that's how I learned how to type. That's how I learned about computers. That's how I learned about, I thought I wanted to be a game programmer until I tried to write my first game and failed miserably. And I realized, yeah, I probably want to be on the creative side of that. So yeah, that was the, yeah, I think, just through osmosis and our father being kind of engaged in the technology world and being a geek himself, and he loved cameras and all this stuff, just through that, made me want to do this. I doubt that I'd be doing what I'm doing today if it weren't for that influence. I'd be doing something, but I doubt if I'd be, if I'd have a pseudo television studio in my spare bedroom in the house if it wasn't for that.